Hey everybody, so we all know that epoxy is crazy expensive, right? And if you're anything like me, when I first started out, I didn't have money to go spend on a big crazy slab of wood and put a bunch of money in epoxy in it, so I came up with this idea. So I'm going to show you a really simple way to save money on epoxy and wood, but still get the same effect for your table, countertop, whatever you're building. I've been running a custom furniture business for years now, but we're very new to YouTube. But if you like this video, please be sure to subscribe because we have a ton of knowledge to share with you. So let's get on with the project. The first thing that you're going to need are some pieces of wood. And for this, I have some 1-inch maple kicking around with a couple live edges on it. Really dry, so I started to lay those out. And I'm just trying to figure out my basic layout. I'll cut off any extra excess because you just don't need to run that much to the planer if you don't have to. So that's basically what it's going to look like, leaving a few inches extra because we're going to start milling these stuff down on my new planer. Now I know I said that this is my new planer, but in fact it's actually about as old as I am. This is a rare Hitachi planer joiner combo that I just picked up a few months ago. Love it. So after we have everything face planed, it's time to bring it over to the joiner because we are going to be doing a bit of a glue up on this. Oh yeah! As you can see, we have some square edges up against these live edges, so we're going to want to match these up, and that way you just have a bit of an odd shape. And the way that I do this, with a mini grinder, you just make a few passes, nice subtle passes, until you get the shape that you want. After that, it's time for the glue up. Now for this step, I basically just use the glue just to hold everything together and some biscuits. That way it makes it a lot easier for the glue up, but it's not really there for strength. So the epoxy is going to do that job for us. This is just to get it together nice and clean. So we add some clamps, making sure it stays nice and flat. So after leaving it for a little while so the glue can dry, it's time to peel it off your table, flip it over, and we'll prep the bottom. I'm just using some 60 grit on my random orbit sander just to get rid of all that glue that squeezed out, make it nice and flat, clean it off, and add some tuck tape to the gaps. This is just making a barrier so that epoxy won't squeeze through once you go to pour. So I have everything taped up. I'm going to clamp it nice and flat because once that epoxy cures, whatever shape it's in, it's going to stay that way. Now that we're set up in our dust-free zone, you want to make sure that this table is sitting perfectly level, because if you don't, it's probably just all going to run off to one side. As far as picking out what epoxy to use, I like to do multiple thin pours for this kind of stuff instead of a deep pour, because the deep pour is very viscous and it seems to always find its way through the tuck tape. And this project I'm using black onyx for the pigment, because this lady saw a vanity top that I did for my own bathroom and she absolutely loved it and wanted the same colors and everything. So I'm going to stop blabbing on and just let you guys enjoy the pour. After giving that a few days to cure, it's time to bring it back out to the dusty shop. Can you guess what the next step is? That's right, the sanding. And as you can see, I'm going diagonal with the grain. That flattens it off, and after that, I just start going with the grain to get rid of all those scratches. Now it's time to cut it down to size. So I just use a square from one side, lay down the track, get out the track saw, cut it away. So after I'm done using the belt sander, I like to do a little trick called water popping. And what that does is once you spray it with a little bit of water and give it a wipe, that raises all the grain, so then you can sand those off and it just makes life a whole lot easier. And it's something you definitely want to do if you're using a water-based finish over top. And I'm sanding all the way up to 320 and making sure that I take my time so that I can do a good job. Once the surface is done, I do all the edges, round the edges, and wipe it down. We're almost ready for some color. For this project, I'm using Provincial by Minwax. It's kind of a medium tone brown, and like I said before, this lady really loved the color that was on the vanity that I built for myself, so that's what we're going with. And also, going over the epoxy, you can tell really what it's going to look like now. It's one of my favorite parts about doing this. Once I went over everything, made sure I didn't miss any spots, it was time to grab a dry rag and go over it, and that gives the stain a bit more uniformity. Once I was finished, I brought it back out to the stain shop and got a little carried away and did the first coat without filming it. So let's start off with the second coat. So first thing I did was took some 400 grit sandpaper and just gave it a hand scuff before adding the second coat. You'll notice that I'm using a roller, not just any roller. I really like to use the foam rollers because if you don't, you end up getting a whole lot of dust particles and lint and everything else in your finish. But there's coat number 2, and as you can see, it is looking good, as it should. So I'll let that dry for the rest of the day before adding the final coat. And there you have it, a finished project that didn't break the bank. If you made it this far into the video, I really appreciate you watching the whole thing. Please be sure to let us know what you thought of the video, the project, in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And as promised, a bonus hack for pouring epoxy coming right up. So you're doing a job where you have to use deep pour epoxy, and after you're done pouring, you notice something, a leak. The epoxy found its way out of the mold somehow. Here's what you can do differently so that doesn't happen. Prior to doing your deep pour, take some not deep pour epoxy and paint it everywhere the epoxy is going to go. That way, it'll completely seal everything so that it's impossible for that deep pour epoxy to work its way out. This little trick could end up saving you a whole lot of headache and a whole lot of money in the end. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video.